if you want to explain something in the world, if you want to talk about reality, you want to talk about the human person, you want to talk about politics, science, society, your answer is always going to be insufficient and inadequate if you're not somehow bringing all that back to God, if you're not looking at it through the lens of God, who God is, who he reveals himself to be, and who he reveals, or what he reveals reality and the human person to be. Something that's really helped me think about kind of theology in its totality, really what it is as a science and a study, comes from St. Thomas Aquinas, actually at the beginning of the Summa Theologiae. And St. Thomas asked this question. He says, what is the object of theology, right? So what is theology kind of looking at? And he says that the material object of theology, so sort of the content of it, is not actually necessarily God. Instead, what he says is that God is the formal object of theology. So theology, what does that mean? The formal object is kind of like the lens, right? So theology then is looking at all of reality, everything, science, politics, gardening, basketball, really anything and everything, through the lens of the truth of who God is and how he's revealed himself. So I always like to think of a microscope, right? God is not so much what we're looking at underneath the microscope as much as he is sort of the lens through which we're reviewing that material object. So I find that really exciting and exhilarating because I have all kinds of interests, right, that run the gambit from culture to politics, to literature, to science. And I think when you study theology, you're not ignoring those things, right? You're not leaving them out. You're not saying they're not important. Instead, what you're saying is that to really get at the heart of what they are and why they matter, we need to put them in a relationship with God. We need to understand them in the light of God, who created them, who sustains them, and who is drawing them back to himself. So really, to kind of sum it all up, I think you study theology because you want to know the truth, and you want to be able to bring all of the factors, all of the evidence to bear in that search for truth. I think for Christians, for Catholics, to study something, but to say, oh, but we're going to leave the truth of who God is, how he's revealed himself to us in Scripture and tradition, we're going to leave that out of the equation, is kind of, I think, a recipe for coming up with insufficient and inadequate answers.